Good evening and welcome. We'll now call to order the regular meeting for the Akron Public Schools Board of Education for Monday, October 26, 2020. Roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar.
Here.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Ms. Autry.
Present.
Mr. Bravo.
Here.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Here.
Thank you.
And if everyone could mute their microphones and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. At this time, we'll open it up to the board for any community and school reflections. Please jump in line in the chat if you would. And just in case I don't see you, is there anyone that would like to start? Mr. Alexander, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to, and I know others board members will speak upon this as well, but our condolences go out to Coach Jones, the Garfield Kenmore girls basketball coach. This is kind of tough for a lot of us who knew her because she was such a dedicated individual to the students. She was a good coach, but even in her time when she was an athlete, she was a good player at the University of Akron, and also had an opportunity to try out in the WBL for the ladies, World Basketball Association. But she was well respected in the community with the people who surrounded her, her family, and others in the community, all her coaches who are her peers. And she was also not just a good coach, but someone who taught well, who was respected in her teaching of the kids and coaching. She was a great role model. I say not just a good role model, but a great role model for all the young ladies and young men who she worked with, because she did a very good job, very active in the community. Just, I mean, going to be someone who's really missed, and it's just sad to have to give condolences to her, because she was still young and still, I think, had a lot more that she could have gave to not just Akron Public Schools, but more importantly to the students that we serve. So that was all I wanted to say, Mr. President. She's going to be greatly missed.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Ms. Mansfield?
I almost forgot to unmute. It's been a long day. Thank you, Mr. Alexander, for bringing that up. I do want to echo those sentiments. I would also say the policy committee should get ready with that naming policy, because I've seen some things circulating online, and what an honor that would be. So just hoping that that's ready, because I know that the community is wants to honor Coach in as many ways as they can. So just wanted to give one other call to my fellow board members, and also a thank you. I was approached to be on an Eagle board of review, and they're looking for community leaders, so that Eagle Scout reviews are not just done with Scout leaders, that they also have community leaders and community members who are involved. I have one son who was an Eagle Scout. I had Scouts, so I thought I might be a decent choice, but I was a little terrified. That's a big responsibility, but they were very kind, and it was actually a fantastic process. I got to sit in on one in the last 2 weeks for a young man. This one happened to be from Copley High School, but a lot of the students that they would be calling us for would be Akron Public School students. So I would encourage my fellow board members, if you get a chance, that you would accept that invitation, because it was really a fantastic way to see how young people give back in our community. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Rittenhouse, did you see the message that someone sent us regarding the live stream? If not, if you could check that out. Thank you. And we will keep an eye on that. Of course, there is a built-in delay, so it could be the delay as well. All right, hearing and seeing no other community and school reflections. I didn't see anyone in the chat, but before I move on, anyone else would like to jump in? Ms. Autry?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to quickly acknowledge the continued engagement that we are getting from families and teachers and community. That is one thing that this pandemic has brought about. And I just wanted to recognize all of the folks who have been communicating with this board. I also wanted to acknowledge the hard work of our teachers as they continue to perfect remote learning, as well as the families and students who are continuing to adjust and smoothing out the process. And then I just wanted to acknowledge the community who I have been seeing really step up over the last week and trying to support our students with some type of fun and entertainment through trick-or-treating. I've been seeing a lot of that going on, sponsored by the community in a safe way, of course. And I just wanted to acknowledge those community groups and members who have been doing that, trying to bring some form of normalcy to our community. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention there's been a lot of violence going on in the community lately, and it's starting to be so much that sometimes it's just hard to even remember. But to those families and friends and loved ones who've been affected by it, I just wanted to acknowledge them and let them know that they are in our prayers. I am praying that we can work our way towards healing because many of our families in the district have been affected by the violence. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront, and thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar, and then Dr. Hall.
So Diana just said much of what I was going to say. So thank you, Ms. Autry, for sharing about the violence and also sharing about the engagement from the community in emails and phone calls. I specifically want to just mention something that one of the students shared in an email. I received an email from one of the students. Whenever we get emails from students, it's actually really good to hear directly from you, regardless of what it is you're sharing. It's just good to know and hear your voice. And so I want to thank the one student who shared how difficult it's been being away from friends and being away from the school, but how he appreciated that he still felt safe where he was. And I just want to say that that is something that we know that some of our students are dealing with, that juxtaposition of wanting to be with friends, but also feeling safe during this time. And I just want to also note that I know that not all of our students are feeling safe right now. And I want to acknowledge that as well. And just share my deepest heartfelt, sentiments that we together can get through this. Unfortunately, this we're not in the clear, and that is the unfortunate thing. I think we all wish that this bad dream would be over, and we would have be back in the life that we once lived, kind of like during the Wizard of Oz, and would go back to Kansas. So the other piece that I wanted to share is I did go to a award meeting and presented. One of the things that I received emails about afterwards is the APS. I think it's called APS Plus or APS After School. I can't remember which one, because I think we might have both actually. So the additional supports that students can receive after school, I think that's a lot of parents have shared that was something that they wanted to know more about and be able to get involved in with their kids. So just think that's a good thing that we do have that additional support for for our families. And lastly, again, another just heartfelt condolences to the family of Coach Jones. She will sorely be missed in our district as well as in the community.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. Dr. Hall?
Yeah, thanks. Again, so I'll begin with condolences to Coach Jones' family as well. It's rare to find mentors with that length of service and just positive results as a result of their work. And so I think Dr. Akbar, Ms. Ocker said a lot of what I was going to say, so I'm not going to repeat all of that. Instead, let me sort of say two things. One, want to acknowledge the lengthy emails that I'm sure a lot of us have been getting with respect to school reopening. I think the one conclusion we've all come to at this point is that there's not going to be a plan that this board approves or disapproves that is going to make everyone in the community happy. And so having said that, I want to thank those of you that have taken the craft emails on, I'm reticent to say on both sides of the issue because I don't see it as being two sides. I see it as multiple viewpoints on how to best serve our kids. And so again, I want to acknowledge the time that you all have taken to craft your emails because these are not quick 2-sentence emails that take, that are throwaway lines where it takes 25 seconds to send an email. These are emails you can tell folks have spent, a lot of time, thinking through and crafting. So want to say thank you to the parents and teachers and caregivers, of our kids. And then lastly, I want to emphasize that how important it is as parents and teachers and community members that to remember that our children are watching. And so when we don't agree on a path forward, when we don't agree on certain things in the community, it's integral that that as parents and as teachers and mentors and coaches, that remember that our children are watching. And so they hear the things we say in our homes about other people. They hear the things that we say on the phone and that we say in the community and things like that. And so it's important, to remember that our children are watching us and they're going to emulate, those actions. And so in times of adversity, where, especially now where it just seems like no matter where you turn, there's vitriol, in great amounts. I just want to just sort of ask respectfully, that as we move forward, that we remember that our children are watching, and this board and this senior team, superintendent, if we agree on nothing else, we just ask that you concede one point, and that is everything that we're doing has your children's best interests at heart. Whether you agree or disagree with those actions, those are the intents of the folks who are on this line. And so again, those are my ask and those are my reflections. And I'll see the floor back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Hearing and seeing no other community or school reflections, I'll just add, I want to say thank you to the folks that have been reaching out on a number of items that we're going to be talking about tonight, including our reopening plan as well as winter activities, winter sports, and the passing of Coach Jones. And I too want to offer my condolences to her family and those who knew her best. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. But thank you all for reaching out. And to that end, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our request to address the board. And we do have a few of those this evening. I have spoken to each of those individuals just before we started the meeting. I'll remind everyone here, we're going to go in the order that they appear on the agenda. So we'll start with Mr. Reynolds. We'll move then to Mr. and Mrs. Hardy, and then to Ms. Vincent. You'll each have 3 minutes to address the board. The board does not respond during the meeting, but we'll follow up with you after the meeting. Mr. Pendleton, our CFO, will help keep time, and we'll let you know when you have about 1 minute left. With that, Mr. Reynolds, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your patience as we get our meeting started, and I will turn it over to you whenever you're ready.
Board members, thank you for your time. My name is William Reynolds, and I am the Vice Chair of Policy Council at Akron Summit Community Action, as well as the representative on the Board of Directors. I understand and appreciate the hard decisions that you have to make. More importantly, I am the father of 3 amazing girls. 2 of my daughters are in kindergarten at Helen Arnold CLC. Yes, I'm making them stand next to me and they're not happy. I'm going to remind you what the stated purpose of the Board of Education is. The Akron Public Schools Board of Education is a public body representing the citizens of Akron on all matters of public education. The Board of Education determines needs and priorities of the school system, allocates resources within the school system, evaluates the overall performance of the school system. At this point, I witness every day our elementary students not being properly educated. This online learning does not work for young children. It is proven that children 6 years old can only sit still for 20 minutes of screen time, not 2 hours. See how I'm trying to have my 6-year-olds join in this meeting. I, along with you, are very concerned about the current numbers of COVID-19 cases in our county. We cannot fear COVID-19, but we must respect it. I would like to share some stats about COVID-19 in children as well as our community. In the entire country, there have been 39 recorded deaths from COVID-19 ages 5 to 14 years old. During the same time, there were 53 deaths for flu and 193 from pneumonia. We have never closed school for flu or pneumonia. The number of cases to hit the age group of 5 through 17-year-old has been 467,000, or 7% of the nationwide total cases. In 2019, there were 50 million kids between age 5 and 17 nationwide. Now in Ohio, there were 13,500 total cases under 18, 7% of all cases. 402 in Summit County. Of the 13,500, only 300 were hospitalized, or 2% total under 18. In Ohio, there was only 1 death from COVID-19. Head Start has been open statewide, and there has only been 2 COVID-19 cases statewide. Head Start has rigorous safety guidelines that they are following. The Hudson School District has 4,600 students, and they had 10 student cases and 3 staff cases, and they are open. As can be seen in the monthly stats, which I gave to you earlier in an email, the cumulative number of cases are in line with previous months, except for 1 week that had exceptionally high numbers. 42% of the zip codes in Akron don't actually appear on the COVID charts. Out of 6,753 total in Summit County, 3,780 total were in Akron. Approximately 360 cases were under 18 as of October 23rd. Our stated goal to be the #1 urban school system in America is not just a lofty aspiration, but one our teachers and staff of 4,400 students are dedicated to daily. APS is always at or near the top performers among the 8 largest urban districts in Ohio. Let me share a part from Hudson School District Superintendent. The Hudson City Schools believe when prudent, children need to be in school. The relationships our students form with their teachers and peers are a large part of a successful school experience for all ages. The Hudson Ready Plan is flexible and prepared for changes in COVID-19 cases. With continued strict enforcement of multiple mitigating safety layers already in place, and the willingness of parents to keep children home when ill and to minimize student gatherings during the day and after school, we will achieve our goal of providing our students with the academic experience they need while navigating through a global pandemic that is challenging for all of us. My main point is that the COVID-19 occurrences to children under 18 is very low, I ask you to be courageous and think about the education of the students, especially kindergarten through 5th grades. These children without the proper foundation will struggle throughout their educational life if they are unnecessarily doing fully online learning too long with all the technical issues. And at this point, it has been too long. I encourage you to vote to bring K through 5 back, either full-time or hybrid. I also encourage you to consider the fact of the risk at the building level. There are certain zip codes in Akron, about 10 of them actually, with 0 cases. And there are certain areas that have high occurrences of COVID-19. The best answer may be to look at this on a building by building basis. If there is a breakout on a certain community, the affected schools could be closed and put back to virtual. I would encourage you to keep an online model for the at-risk population. Let's get back to properly teaching our students. If the health department or governor feels a shutdown is necessary, let them make the decision. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. This time, Mr. and Mrs. Hardy, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members. My wife, Christy, and I come to you tonight as the parents of 2 APS students, as a graduate degree holder in public health, and as a registered nurse who has served at the bedside week in and week out during this pandemic. We can report that our 7th grader is doing okay. Her age and maturity enable her to gain from her virtual instruction, stay on task, manage her assignments. While it's far from ideal, she is hanging in there. Our 3rd grader, however, is not. Despite incredible teachers, careful planning, and dedicated parents, he is struggling. We can testify to the tears, the outbursts, even the tummy aches from the stress. Virtual learning is harming our son, and we're sure he's not the only one. Little ones are not built for this. They aren't mature enough to be self-starters and manage both their learning and this isolation. We have all said that we want to listen to the science. So what does the local data tell us? It tells us that with proper protocols, classrooms are not a significant source of transmission and spread. Family gatherings, sleepovers, birthday parties, and yes, sports, something APS allows, are all creating more transmission than classroom learning. When we look nationally and globally, studies are showing time and again that students 10 years old and under in the classroom are nowhere near a risk for community spread. Harvard, Johns Hopkins, the New England Journal of Medicine, Association have all published safe reopening guidelines and have recommended in-person instruction in some form. Why? Because unfortunately, this virus is not going away anytime soon. And if virtual school becomes policy for the rest of this year and beyond, the impact for so many children and families will be severe and long-lasting. It will exacerbate existing inequities. And we cannot allow a situation to persist where suburban and affluent children have access to their classrooms and urban students do not. And so as parents, as health professionals, we are respectfully asking the board to please offer the choice of in-person instruction, beginning with elementary and special needs students. Surely we all can agree that these 2 populations need their classrooms the most. If the board decides not to allow this, at the very least, it must publicly articulate specific criteria under which it would. Surveys every 9 weeks to gauge feelings is simply not an acceptable strategy. The science shows us that prepared classrooms are not super spreaders, and our local data has confirmed it. Please allow Akron Public School families an in-person option, or at least put our district on a firm and detailed path to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Hardy. And I just want to point out, many of you would be are probably familiar with Mr. Hardy, who is also a former Akron Public Schools board member and past president. Thank you both for being here tonight. Next, we will hear from Ms. Angel Vincent.
Alrighty, well, thank you all for allowing me the time to speak before the board today. Sorry, I get emotional, so you have to just, sorry, bear with me. I'm Angel Vincent. I am a proud Kenmore graduate. I graduated in 1988, and I had the honor to go to school with Yantami. She was a great athlete and a great person, even back then. I even went out for the track team because she swore I could throw. Couldn't do it, but she swore I could. She tried to teach me. It was bad. Anyway, so when I heard of her passing, and I'm pretty involved with the alumni from Kenmore, a bunch of us, were just chatting and talking, and we thought what a wonderful honor it would be if we could find out how to go about getting something named in her honor. She did so much for the girls at that school. I mean, the progress she made with some of those girls. She had some rough teams. I mean, high school girls are rough. I mean, I had one. She was something, and she led them with love and by example, and taught them how to be right in the world. She showed them how to be proud of who they are and where they came from. The fact that she came back, she could have went anywhere in the world and played basketball and taught anywhere. She came back to home. So that, speaks volumes just for how much she cared about her community. So like I said, I did start the petition in order to, find out how to go about naming the gym in the new building. We want this to live on for a long time. I understand that the current building had the old Garfield building gym was named after someone. I don't know who that was. I didn't go to Garfield. I know nothing about it. But I do think that moving forward, it would be a huge step to show support of especially a woman of color who led by example, someone who was proud of who she was and proud of what she did and proud of her kids. And every one of those kids were hers.
1 minute.
My daughter played for one of the schools in the area. She didn't go to Kenmore, but my daughter wanted to play for Yantami. She was willing to move back to Kenmore to play for Yantami. So it just, she did so much, and she left us way too soon. At current count, the petition was started, I believe, Wednesday of last week, and we're at 7,512 signatures. The comments alone in the petition are heartfelt and moving. People really want this to happen, and whatever I need to do or needs to be done, I am willing to help with that. I just think that it is vitally important that we show support for her family and this community and honor her and her legacy. The petitions has had over 21,000 views, and it's been shared 2,700 times just in the last 5 days. So I just hope that, once you guys decide on how the policy is going to change, let me know. I will get whatever needs to be.
Okay, I think we may have temporarily, Ms. Vincent, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for reaching out today. And again, our thoughts and our prayers are with Coach Yantami Jones' family and those who knew her best. We appreciate you reaching out. I did get a copy of that. Thank you for sending it along. I'll make sure it gets out to the rest of our board, and we'll be in touch as soon as we update our policies. So we appreciate you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we are going to move to the recognitions portion of our agenda, and I'm going to turn it over at this time to our Instructional Policy and Student Achievement Committee for a very special recognition from some of ours, for one of our staff members.
Thank you, President Bravo. I don't know if anyone else is having internet issues, but I'm hearing that it's fairly widespread tonight. So hopefully we can get through tonight. It is my great honor to get to recognize our Director of Community Relations, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. Then that is our own Carla Chapman. She's been named as a recipient of the Ohio STEM Learning Network, that's OSLN. She is their 2020 Ohio STEM Innovator winner. The Ohio STEM Learning Network is composed of 7 regional hubs, of which Akron is one, that are committed to helping the state to inspire and train the next generation of scientists and technology leaders. Sam Cruz is the OSLN Akron Hub Manager for the 13 counties of the Akron region. During the spring, he related the fantastic work that Carla and her team were doing over scheduled calls with other regions around the state. From there, the formal recognition followed. Quote, "The Ohio STEM Innovator Award recognizes an Ohioan who has demonstrated an outstanding contribution to the support of STEM education and outstanding within his or her region. This awardee is a leader that identifies, supports, and promotes innovative practices and addresses diversity, equity, and inclusion challenges to ensure expanded access to quality STEM education," unquote, from the OSLN. Keep in mind that STEM also is an acronym that stands for Strategies That Engage Minds. The connectors demonstrate demonstrates that principle in a big way. We all know that. Congratulations to Carla and her dedicated team. Under the leadership of Carla L. Chapman, District Director of Community Relations, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, a team created the Connectors program. Through the program, 254 trained non-instructional staff members called Akron students to determine their needs, logging more than 10,000 interactions during 52 days of remote learning. That needs said again. 254 non-instructional staff members called Akron students to determine their needs, logging more than 10,000 interactions during 52 days of remote learning. The program helped many of the approximate 22,000 Akron students with such things as using their unfamiliar technology at home to accessing food, healthcare, and childcare. The program is underway again for the new school year. For her efforts, Chapman has been named the recipient of OSLN's 2020 Ohio STEM Innovator Award, as she has demonstrated an outstanding contribution to the support of STEM education and outreach within her region. Congratulations, Carla.
Thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. I appreciate the recognition, but you know that I'm going to say there is an awesome team of folks who helped make this happen. So I have to thank Yvonne Colbert, Desiree Bowden, April Porter, and Andrew Zaccardi. Teamwork makes the dream work. So couldn't have done this without their just thankful. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well deserved, Ms. Chapman. Thank you for everything that you do.
We're very proud of you, Carla.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we have no other communications before the board. We are ready to enter the business portion of our evening. So I will look for a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from our meeting of October 12th, 2020.
So moved.
Thank you. A motion by Ms. Autry, a second by Dr. Akbar. Any comments, question, or discussion on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent's recommendations, personnel.
Yes, Mr. President. I wish to recommend approval of the personnel recommendations presented in categories 5 through 16. And again, highlighting item 16.1, the death of Yotami Jones, who has been working for the Akron Public Schools for 26 years.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Ms. Mansfield, a second from Dr. Akbar. Any comments, questions, or discussion?
Mr. Bravo, just wanted to also mention the retirement of Mary Dean. She'll be greatly missed. I know that she likes to give Dr. James a hard time, so that could be one of the reasons she's chosen to retire, because she won't have him to go toe-to-toe with all the time too. So she's going to be a tough one to replace. I know when these come around that we say that, and I don't want it to ever become flippant, because she is an amazing principal.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, Mr. President. The other principal retiring is also Sharon Hill Jones, who's another one that got on my case because I couldn't deliver her a new building at Firestone Park.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Congratulations to both of those retirees. Had a lot of opportunity to work with Principal Dean, and Ms. Jones was also my son's principal when she started at Case. So congratulations to both of them, and hope they enjoy the time off. Hearing and seeing no other comments, questions, or discussion, roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the resolutions and motions presented in category 21.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Sorry. Thank you. Motion by Dr. Hall, and I believe a second by Ms. McKittrick. Great. Any comments, questions, or discussions on the consent agenda items? Dr. Akbar.
Yes, I just have one. I noticed that the Akron Symphonic Winds has a 10-week, 30-minute private virtual lesson, which is of great value. I just wanted to point that out for that donation for our students. We know that this time has been very difficult for students, and just having that type of resource for students who may be missing connection to something that they love is definitely valuable. So just want to point that out and thank them.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, questions, or discussion on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr.
Yeah.
Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes.
McKittrick,
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Akbar.
Yes.
All right. And finally, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the business affairs recommendations presented in category 22.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Alexander, a second from Ms. McKittrick. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the business affairs agenda items? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And at this point, we will move into our superintendent's report to review our school options update. And as we begin that conversation, I want to echo something that Dr. Hall said earlier. This has been a very difficult discussion as we've gone throughout this school year. And I also want to say on behalf of the board that we greatly appreciate all of the feedback that we've received, all of the parents and teachers and community members and even students who have reached out to share their thoughts and their feedback with us. We appreciate it. We also know that it's difficult to come up with any plan that is going to satisfy everyone, but we are listening to you and we are hearing what you have to say. And we appreciate you taking the time to reach out to us and share that feedback with us, and know that whatever decision we make, it is in what we feel is the best interest of your students, but not just your students, all of our students, and the faculty and the staff that support them. So thank you again for reaching out. And Mr. Superintendent, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item that I'd like to go over will be winter sports. I know there are guidelines from the Ohio High School Athletic Association to proceed with winter sports, and I'm talking about girls and boys basketball, swimming, bowling, and wrestling. Swimming, I think we can follow the same procedures we did for the FAST programs. They're very, very similar. Limiting the number of people who can be in and around the pool, and we had identified procedures for that when we looked at all sports and ultimately approved that the swimming program could continue. Bowling, those are done at a variety of bowling venues in the city, and typically those students are separated. If you're, a typical bowling rink, are separated to one area, and that is not a contact type sport. Wrestling and basketball are a little different. We know that in wrestling, there's a lot of contact, primarily one-on-one, and of course, basketball, running up and down the court, there's some physical contact. Now, I'm waiting on some guidance from Summit County Public Health. Again, we have the guidance from the Ohio High School Athletic Association, which mirrors what happened with fall sports. The one thing I am looking at a little differently for these winter sports, wrestling and basketball in particular, is the potential to conduct COVID rapid testing on our athletes. So we are talking with a vendor. Right now, it looks like we can get those tests for about $35 each. And I would estimate, I know Mr. Vasilati is on, but with $35 a person, and at least once, maybe twice a week per athlete, we could be looking at maybe as low as 12 to 14,000, per instance of testing to cycle through all of them. So there's some details I need to work out, with that, and which I will do, and then report that back to the board. But for the most part, all the other processes and procedures, limiting the venues, limiting the number of tickets for spectators who could actually see one of these events during the winter sports period will certainly be in place, similar to what it was for fall sports. Are there any questions about that?
Thank you. We'll open it up to the board for questions and comments, and to facilitate our discussion tonight and make sure everyone has an opportunity, I'd ask that you limit it to either 2 questions or 1 question and a follow-up, and then we'll move around the table. We won't limit the amount of time on discussion for any of these topics, but we just will limit the questions until everyone's had a chance to go around. Mr. Alexander?
Yes, we're taking the proper precautions, and I'm glad we've looked at all these. And I am concerned too, because basketball, I'm an ex-basketball player, ex-football player, but there's a lot of contact in basketball, more than people think. And definitely a lot of contact in wrestling. 99% of the time, they're basically in contact with each other. So I do have some concerns with that. But my question is basically, I know we have the schools that we're going to be, certain schools we're going to be using. The ventilation is okay for everyone who may be coming in from the outside, as well as those kids who will be participating?
Yeah, there was a question from one staff member about ventilation. So for indoor sports, we would be using 3 CLC venues, if I remember correctly. So we have Buckto, which is a new CLC. So those systems were designed to provide the right amount of air changes inside the building. Ellet, of course. And Buckto, we have Firestone, which is another one. And we also have East that had their systems upgraded when that building was done. So the two that primarily wouldn't be used for that, we have Kenmore, Garfield, and then we have North High School. Those are two that haven't had the upgrade. So our CLCs are, they're in compliance with what are called ASHRAE standards. They should be fine. And we also have, which you'll see in our next report, on some of the sanitation, which I'll say is state of the art, that we'll be using as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Anyone else? I don't see anyone in queue.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Autry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do we know the approximate number of student athletes we're talking about this go round? I know for fall, it was about 800 students.
Yeah, we do. And I'll beg Mr. Vassalotti to come on, because I think he sent that to me in an email. I just can't remember the exact number. Either he or Mrs. Folk would have that number. At least I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Yes, hello everybody. The numbers are a bit less than the fall. Dr. James mentioned testing for basketball and wrestling. So we crunched those numbers today for sure, so we could get those to Mrs. Folk and she could put together an estimate. But the approximate number of basketball players, boys and girls combined, for JV and varsity throughout APS would be about 250. And then we have approximately 80 to 100 wrestlers total in our 5 schools that have wrestling teams. So those are the numbers for the 2 contact sports. And we could certainly adjust schedules like we did for the fall, as Dr. James mentioned, to focus mostly on city competition, use a limited number of venues. At basketball, we're looking at using Ellet, Firestone, and Buchtel, and we use separate venues for wrestling to help with scheduling. So, but those are the numbers for basketball and wrestling. With bowling, we typically have teams, boys and girls combined, of about 15 to 20 per school for all 6 of our schools. Bowling, of course, a non-contact sport. And then the swim program at Firestone, the only one in the city, but it's amazing there. They do a great job, and they have a number of swimmers there, and they're used to the protocols from the FAST program. What's unique about the Firestone swim team is they would compete outside of APS, of course, because they are our only swim team. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. A question or a follow-up?
Yes, I do actually. So I know with the fall sports, we weren't using locker rooms and whatnot. So, and it might have been in the plan that you sent. I apologize if I overlooked that. So how would that work as far as with be using locker rooms? They have to dress for competition.
Right. I'll let Mrs. Folk answer that question because she works closely with Summit County Public Health on developing those guidelines.
Yes, Mrs. Autry, we will be able to use the locker rooms. We actually put that protocol into effect at the end of the football season as we were ready to do a district type of game. And those protocols include the new sanitation process that we have put and the board has approved to disinfect and antimicrobial in those particular locker rooms. So those services have been started already. And then the students will follow the sanitation, health checks, and requirements as they use the locker rooms. And then we will completely re-sanitize them after they're used, which is what we did exactly at Elliott when we used the football stadium.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Dr. Akbar?
Yes. So my question, I guess my biggest concern is not necessarily basketball. I think that based off what I heard, if we're following the same logic from the fall sports, that seems like if we can get the testing, we should be good. My greatest concern has to do with wrestling, specifically to the meets that happen with the multiple teams. I don't know exactly what they're called, but I think they're meets with multiple teams coming together. I don't know if that's necessary in order to make it to the state championship or what have you, but I'm wondering if when Mr. Vasilati mentioned they can modify the schedule, I'm wondering if we could limit the amount of outside teams. If we're implementing the testing for our wrestlers in the city, would that be a necessity to go against people outside the city? And if so, could we avoid it for the entire season and just focus on the meets or external competitions in the finals or playoffs or what have you? And I don't know who that question is directed to, maybe Mr. Vasilati or Deb or Dr. James. I don't know.
Mr. Vasilati.
Yes, it's a great question, Dr. Akbar. So wrestling, obviously a high contact sport. We could certainly set up the schedule so that it's focused on dual meets within the city. At some of our schools, numbers are such that we typically can't field a full wrestling team, but say we have 6 to 8 individual wrestlers. In that case, we could possibly do a tri-meet within the city, which we do. The point there being we would stay within APS and the numbers would still be relatively small. Certainly our teams would benefit eventually from competition outside of the city as they prepare for the OHSA tournament. But I was just thinking as you were asking the question about cross country in the fall, and obviously that's much less of a contact sport than wrestling. But I was thinking of it because initially we just ran cross country meets within the city, dual meets against ourselves. And then toward the end of the season, because the protocols were being followed and it was going smoothly, we were able to open it up to invitationals the last couple of weeks of the season. And, Firestone in particular jumped on that and had some good success in invitationals. They still have a young man competing at regionals right now. So that could be a possibility maybe down the road as we get closer to the OHSA tournament in February to perhaps open it up to non-league competition. But we could certainly set up the schedule initially so that it's just within APS for wrestling.
Thank you. As I shared this morning with Dr. James, I think that the sports is very, it is a high risk, but we have already started allowing sports. So I think at least at this point, we should try to figure out how do we help all the sports play as much as possible. And one of my biggest concerns is if we're going to do testing with our players, how reliable or helpful is that if we're having multiple different meets with teams outside the city who aren't receiving the same level of testing as often. And so if we want to maintain our safety, I think that as much as we can maintain the season within house until you get into that playoff season or whatever it's called, that would be something I would suggest if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. I don't see anyone else in line, but are there any other comments, questions, or discussion on the winter sports? Ms. Autry?
I just wanted to clarify that indeed there would have to be a waiver as well for families who wish their students to participate. I'm assuming that's the case.
I mean, there's language that a form that the State Athletic Association had our athletes sign for fall sports, and I think that same form is in place for when that they're going to follow all the guidelines and abide by the rules. And also, as we did for fall, we set up a few extra items, you know, with curfews and, you know, making sure that people are aware of their behavior when they're off of campus. There's a lot to say about that, both with our students and employees.
Another question, comment, or follow-up, Ms. Autry?
No.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Mr. Superintendent, do you need anything from us on that item then?
Again, I have to get some information on testing. That would certainly be the plan, you know, to move forward with sports. And so we'll have to, you know, work through those details and then get something to board for that. I would certainly agree or feel like our student athletes could still do their, you know, preparations for the actual competition, which, you know, we still have a little bit of time left, but we may need to have a special board meeting or something to approve whatever testing regimen that we come up with in a firm to do that.
Thank you. And for me, would you be able, when you bring that back to the board, to also make some clarification on conditioning for spring sports?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Which will make it easier.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. And at this time, we will move on to the school options update if you're ready.
Yeah, so before we do the school options update, I want to have Mrs. Folk talk about some of the procedures that we'll be following just in terms of safety.
Good evening to you all. I would like to bring you a presentation regarding a student day with the modifications that we've put into place for the student day when they are coming to school, going through the school, and being dismissed from school. So if you will allow me to proceed, I will begin to process that with Joanne's help, who's going to help process this with me. The modifications do include some cleaning procedures that we have already put in place and we will continue to use throughout as we move forward. As you can see, we're going to cover several areas tonight in the presentation. We're going to talk about transportation, controlled movement, social distancing, breakfast or lunch modifications, and these will help make the school safe while the students come into school, no matter what kind of process you approve for us to move forward. The first I'd like you to do is go to us and arrive at school. So we're going to have the students riding a school bus. These are also into place for band transportation for our students. So we will allow you to see the students watch and enter a bus.
Good morning, Vicki. Don't forget your hand sanitizer. Proceed to your assigned seat, please. Good morning. Good Chris. Morning. You don't have your face mask today, but that's okay because we have an extra one for you. And you will give me.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And you can go ahead and proceed to your seat. Thank you. Thanks. You're welcome. Good morning. Good morning.
As you can see, all our students are required to wear masks. They do sanitize their hand on arrival.
Chris is here. Okay.
We will provide masks if they do not have one.
Good night. Have a good night. Good night. Bye.
Good night.
See you in the morning.
And what's very important is, as Vicki was the first one to get on the bus, she has an assigned seat in the very back of the bus. This bus is actually used to travel students currently to one of our non-public schools. And if you could see it a little bit better, there's an actual assigned seating above each seat with the student's name, so they know exactly where to go. Beth then takes the attendance, which is exactly what you watched her do, so that we, if we would need to, find a student for a COVID-related issue on a bus or a van, we'll know exactly where they sat, and then the attendance is taken into the office should we need this. Please be aware we have not had to pull any student that is currently transported for a COVID-related issue. It's been a very successful process, and this same process is already in effect with the teams that are traveling on our activity buses for sporting events as well, whether football, band related, or volleyball related, as we have done those sports in the fall. We're going to enter the school building. So the entry is very important. So we're going to go ahead and watch a student enter the building.
They'll go through the door and they will pick up their grab-and-go meal.
Have a good morning today. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
All students enter one by one. They will continue to wear their masks. Their grab-and-go breakfast will be available for them at the entrance upon arrival, and then they will proceed directly to their local classroom or cafeteria, depending on which is the best model for the student meal in the morning. Start going through the school day. So we're going to go to the classroom. And this is where it gets very instructive as to how we have set up the classrooms for the students to be properly socially distanced.
So these are socially distanced students. So Seth, I want you to take your stick and I want you to place it from Chris to Vicki to show that there's 6 feet between them. And take it from Chris to Julie, okay? And then from Julie to Jeff, okay? That it's 6 feet between Julie and Vicki, and that it's 6 feet between Vicki and Chris. And that's why we didn't have to take the furniture out of the room. Between you and the teacher, and then from Vicki to Julie, and then from Seth to Julie. And there's our 6 feet, guys. This is the teacher work area as well. So we wanted the teacher to feel comfortable to know where the work area is for the smartboard, but we also wanted the kids to have an idea where that balance is. So Chris, come up and stop right here for a minute for me. There will be sanitizing solution available for her to come up. The teacher can come over here, and then Chris can come over and work on the board. So this is also a workstation so that we can continue the actual opportunity to go ahead and do that type of interaction between the teacher and the student. And then I can come back up and teach as the teacher for the classroom.
What's important about this is please look at the color of paper on the desk. Should you have a blended model anytime in the future, we wanted to show you an A day, which was the yellow paper, and a B day, which is the pink paper, so that the students are actually assigned to the specific desk or in the room. So therefore, that desk is owned by that student if they were in school 5 days a week or 2 days a week, or even in small group. And this is set up throughout the building using the various classrooms for every location that we have, we've currently started and completed the elementaries. We were working on the middle schools, and we are starting on the high schools. So we will go ahead and continue to do the floor markings, and the students will have access to the distance to the smartboard and then hand sanitizer upon arrival in the room and at various locations throughout the room should they go and do small group with the teacher or be also working on a project so that they can keep their hands safe and sanitized during the whole process. We're going to the next slide, and we're going to show you about lockers. Lockers are the one thing in classrooms that are still not operational, but we want the children to understand that that's something they can't have easy access to. So in the classroom at the elementary buildings, they are actually located. So we have a slide to show you two things in a classroom. One is a sink that is currently available with a water fountain in this classroom, and then one is the lockers. So I'd like you to look at the next slide, please. This particular sink is got a water fountain attached to it, so therefore they will be covered, although we still want the water to be accessible to wash hands while they're in the classroom, and locks have been ordered. This one happens to be just covered. We had extra furniture, so we went ahead and placed it in front of the lockers. Teachers are more than welcome to use these lockers for some of their supplies, but we felt by putting a barrier between it, students would get used to taking their book bag and their coat directly to their assigned seat while they're in school for the time that they are there. I wanted to show you how you travel the building. And so we're now going to show you hallway markings and stairway markings so that it's very easily seen by students and visitors or even our own staff how you travel throughout the building in a hallway. You can see from this slide going forward, we have exact directionals, and I want you to think driving a car. Everybody travels on the right. This is a single mode going down the hallway directly to a classroom by the staff. And this is a pass it by each other. These are not considered direct contacts. Everyone will be wearing their masks. Everybody is moving quickly in a timed fashion. So therefore, this kind of movement is not considered a direct contact. The next thing I wanted to show you is elevators. And if you've been in any buildings, there are always markings in elevators. To limit the number of people that should be there, it depends on the size of the elevator. Most of our schools now have elevators, so we had to properly mark them. This particular elevator is limited to 4 people. They each stand in the corner during the travel, and they should have their masks on. It is a short period, and students do not get to travel by themselves on an elevator. If it is in use, they usually have an accompanying adult. Our next issue is a lab class. This building happens to have a K-6 configuration, so should we need additional spaces beyond the time that a lab may be in use, we wanted to show you a socially distanced lab.
Wanted to make sure that we could still do the lab, and we determined if you sat the students at the end of each side table and the student in the middle of the middle table, you could easily get 6 feet between them, enough students to be in the class at the time with the teacher. And I have 16 students being able to sit here.
So this is also an opportunity, should we bring younger students back, as opposed to always having the lab in the building. We have additional spaces throughout the building where students could be assigned a desk or time and space to do the work with the teacher that is assigned to them. Our next travel is to go the stairway because this building is a 2-story building. So the same type of markings that you saw in the hallway now start to move you up through the corridors on the stairs.
Directional stickers at the bottom of the stairways. They are on the landings. They're at the top of the stairways.
So again, the floor markings indicate that you will be on the right side of the stairs going up and the right side of the stairs coming down. It indicates at the top, bottom, and landing in between, and it's one-way traffic. And then there is safe distance between them. Now, I did have a couple of people ask, should all stairways just be one direction going up, say on the north side of the building, and one, say, on the south side of the building going down? That is not a practical use of stairways. It does not meet the fire code, and we wanted the same pattern to be held throughout the district because our students sometimes are visiting other buildings, whether they are there for a special event, they are there for some type of additional class instruction, or sometimes just because they move. So the same pattern of hallway and stairway travel is throughout the district in we set them up. The next thing we're going to do is we are now going to go to the cafeteria.
Is to socially distance. We now can have 2 students to a table, not our standard 4, but we also have everybody 6 feet apart. So we can use the cafeteria to service a meal as well.
This is where it becomes important to understand just how the tables are used. They usually do sit 4 to 5 students, and sometimes in the past they have been grouped together so the tabletops touched, similar to what you and I would do with a family dinner at our house. Distancing requirements and our COVID requirements, we now have all the tables facing the same direction, and at the elementary where these tables are located, the room can be used for 2 students to a table, which in this building allows us about 60 students if at one time. So we could offer congregate feeding at breakfast or lunch if needed, if not everybody's in the classroom. And I can advise at the high school level with the tables that have the seating attached, we've already started working on those, and where they used to be 12 seats to a table, they're now limited to 3. So that we can socially distance. So the principals are now working on how they would use these types of rooms or additional class space as well. So from here, we want to take you back to the end of your day and go into the office as a visitor so that you could, if you were picking up a student, what would an office look like?
Good, if it's open. If I was visiting, then this is how the office is set up for them to handle.
Just so I can show it.
So again, we have floor markings so that we can assist our visitors at coming into the building. Again, all people are required to wear masks unless they have a medical reason not to, but for a visitor, it would be required. And then we have placed plexiglass dividers in the reception area. Now we want to take you to a clinic because this is an adjustment for our services.
If a student is reporting to the office not feeling well, their first stop will be at this location where they will be asked to sit in the chair or stand on deck. The health aide then will realize that they are out here and they will ask the student to go into the clinic. And once they get in the clinic, they will then stand on the appropriate socially distanced location. And then they will stand here while the health aide begins to do the assessment. If they are perfectly fine, they may be returning back to class. But if they truly do have symptoms that may be related to something that needs to go home, such as COVID, with a proper temperature take and other assessments, the student will be taken over to what is the isolation location. And in this case, for this clinic, it is located here. And Vicki at this point is going to sit back here. She will be asked to wait while the health aide then calls the parents to say that Vicki needs to be picked up. And she will remain in the isolation location until the parent arrives and the student can be released. If we have more than one student at this location, and I have somebody in this particular isolation location, I can then also provide the restroom as a location as well.
This particular setup has been modified throughout the whole district. We've actually taken some particular small clinics and found other larger areas within buildings so that we could do this setup. We want to make sure that we're following the protocols for proper assessment, and we will ask parents to pick up their child within 1 hour of notification so that we can get them to their parent or guardian as soon as possible, removal from the building, and to a health provider for further assessment. From the clinic, I think now we're done with our day. So we're going to go ahead and put them back on a school bus and hope that they've had a great day with us, and we will be loading the bus.
Good morning, Vicki. Don't forget your hand sanitizer. Proceed to your assigned seat, please. Good morning,
Good
Chris.
morning.
You don't have your face mask today, but that's okay because we have an extra one for you. You will give me.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And you can go ahead and proceed to your seat. Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
What's important about this is the fact that at the end of the day, the schools will be lining up their students according to their bus roster so that we can get this first student that sits in the back of the bus to be the first person on the bus and the last student off the bus to, or vice versa, first person off to be the first person off, because the routes usually start at the end of the route and move outward. So we wanted to line the students up as well. You have done a wonderful job approving the sanitation application at the last board meeting. We wanted to show you what it actually looks like. So we have a slide for you to see it being applied. Now, this is the two-step process. He is actually showing you the end of the process for the antimicrobial that is currently also used at Summa Health and at Akron Children's. These will be applied to all restrooms monthly, in classrooms, cafeterias, reception areas, gyms, bleachers, locker rooms on a 90-day basis. Although lockers probably will get a monthly because they also have restrooms. So this helps alleviate and helps distance together. It helps us be safe. It helps us to put in the processes to make the building ready for us to accept students and staff in a safe manner throughout the time that they are in the building. I can tell you this sanitation procedure is currently going through its full process, and we will be completely done with all buildings, including ancillary buildings, as of next Tuesday. So we will be ready for students and the staff as they return or continue to work in the buildings.
Great. Mr. Superintendent, do we want to open it up for any questions on building procedures before we move forward? If you guys want to let me know in the messages if you'd like to line up with any comments or questions, 2 questions or a comment and a question, or a question and a follow-up if you would. And I see that Ms. McKittrick would like to kick us off, and then Dr. Akbar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are temperatures going to be taken at all during the day? I thought there was some conversation about having temperatures taken before the kids even got on the bus. And then my second question is, what kinds of cleaning processes are going to be in place during the day when the kids are actually in the buildings? Thank you.
To answer your first question, originally when COVID came out, it was a discussion of having temperatures taken upon entry to buses, entry to the building. Because of the information that has come forward since then, it is not the leading symptom that is currently the lead to determine COVID. Obviously, we are going to have all students do a self-check at home and instruct parents they should not come if they have any symptoms, the same as we've already done with staff. And because of the change in the CDC guidelines, it is not a requirement that temperatures be taken as they get on the bus or as they arrive to school. However, they will be taken upon any issue that comes during the day at the clinic, and the offices also have handheld thermometers should there be an issue at a time when a health aide or nurse is not available. The second question, I'm sorry, Mrs. McKittrick, can you just state it again, please?
Sure. I just wanted to know what kinds of things are going to be the cleaning procedures during the day.
There actually is a specific schedule of routine cleaning, all high-touch areas that goes into effect every 2 hours once the building actually opens. So obviously, if we're feeding in the classrooms, we'll be removing the trash from the areas because it is not sanitary to have it following breakfast, as an example. And the custodial staff will continue to touch all high-touch areas with the proper solutions every 2 hours, as we have established in the administrative buildings and in other locations, and continue to do that process until the end of the school day, and then begin the regular full cleaning at night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar.
Yes. So Ms. McKittrick just asked one of my questions. So I guess I have a question which you mentioned about backpacks and not being able to use lockers. And I know that many of the schools actually have policies or rules against carrying backpacks in schools. And I looked in the policy manual and I could not find a policy on book bags. So maybe it's in administrative guidelines, or maybe each school gets to decide that. But I do know that that's also a big concern for staff that work in the buildings, considering we've had quite a bit of violence in the community. And I hate to have to ask this question, but I'm wondering, how do we mitigate some concerns from potential staff that may have when they see an increased use of book bags in their classrooms?
Our general policy regarding book bags, Dr. Akbar, is that they are to be clear or mesh so that you can see in them. And I've already worked with Mrs. Ejic regarding the type of materials that are used. Most of the instruction is done on the Chromebook. We do not have a lot of necessarily that students need to pack back and forth, so there is limited amount that needs to be in a backpack. At the elementary level, they will be just sitting next to the chair that is or desk assigned to the student. At the middle school and high school, they will travel with the student but they should be able to be small and see-through and meshed, similar to what we've done before.
Okay. Thank you for that. The other, since I get to ask another question, since my first question was taken, I think you did a great job with the videos of showing how things could work in school buildings at pretty much every space. And again, I know I didn't teach in Akron, but I taught in Detroit, and it doesn't seem plausible for all the complexities that happen within the classroom building. I'm sorry, classroom walls. So inside that classroom walls, at any moment, you can have Brad walking back and forth in the back of the room. You could, have a student needing you to help them at their desk with a question. And I'm wondering, just thinking about how, the practicalities of what happens in the classroom. How do you, what are your thoughts about that? Because what you showed was what we hope will happen. Everyone's sitting nicely at their desk. But we know in reality that's not what happens. So can you share, and maybe it's Ms. Gigic, I don't know, but what are your thoughts about how do we manage that?
Well, obviously, we have ordered additional safety shields for staff members. So staff members can certainly wear a mask and a shield if they would like to have that extra face covering. Students will need to wear their masks, and I realize that students will be walking around the room, but we are in the process of working with our teachers, our guidance counselors, and our instructional specialists to help learn exactly what is the best way for every student to be safely maintained in the building. We truly are waiting to see in small group. We have plenty of distance for us to be able to do that. And I've been in a number of elementary buildings, and our teachers do a great job of having students sit in an assigned seat. And usually when called upon, they go directly to the teacher when called upon. So I think we have great management skills in our classrooms, and I'm sure our teachers will help put that together as we bring students back in.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. Mr. Alexander?
Ms. Polk, that was a very, very good presentation. And I have several questions, but I'm going to ask you two, and I'll send the rest to you later to get your answers. But the two questions I'm going to ask, how are we going to handle disruptive students in the building with the COVID virus? Because if there's a fighter or you got a kid who is just, you tell them to sit down, they constantly get up and move and do, how are we going to handle those situations? That's the first question.
I'm sure that our building principals, along with their staffs, are putting some of those issues together as we train them to teach how the classroom needs to be set up. And remember that sometimes, Mr. Alexander, even if the clinic is currently being used, there are conference rooms and other locations in the buildings that our staff are very able to take a student to as they need to blow off steam and be able to get control of their emotions, if that is what the issue is, while they try to deal with it. So I trust our principals will handle that along with the staff members as they feel the protocol is required by the student.
Okay, because the only concern I have is a physical contact, when maybe they have to kind of break up a fight or something. Now it becomes physical, and now you got contact with them. Okay,
and
thank you.
We will certainly use our best management skills to prevent those and to go ahead and address them should they arise.
Okay, and then my second question is, with the sanitizer that we use, if you have a person who has some type of respiratory problems, will that affect them as far as a respiratory kid who has asthma or a teacher who has some type of breathing problem or issue? How is that sanitizer will it affect them in any type of manner?
It is completely non-toxic. Once it is applied and dried, it actually self-seals and completely dry. So therefore, it does not have any residue on it, and it does not provide any problems with it. We have, as we've applied, worked with the principals and the staff that are currently in the building to ask them not to report the day that we currently apply it, but once it is completely dried, it is not an issue for any kind of exhalants or fumes that would bother somebody with a respiratory issue.
Okay, yeah, 'cause that was just a concern that I had with in reference to that, and someone else that brought that to my attention as well beforehand. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Ms. Mansfield, and then Dr. Hall.
Thank you, Deborah. That was absolutely so enlightening. I think that it gives great reassurance. I can tell you I've tried to limit my trips to the grocery store since they started loosening up rules, right? Because for a while they had one-way aisles and there were, all kinds of extra precautions in place. And I feel like all that's gone away, and yet we still are grocery shopping. So I think that seeing what a fantastic job, especially in those hallways, and knowing that that's not contact is really reassuring. One of the things that I'm sure will be asked or that will be pointed out is that was one of the newer buildings. That was a CLC, and we do have several that are not. I didn't really see anything that I think wouldn't work in a non-CLC. Do you foresee anything that won't? Because I'm sure we're going to get asked.
Actually, to be honest with you, the same procedures have worked, the same floor markings, but as an example, one of the things that we found in the older buildings is we had to readjust the clinics. So we had to work with the principal to find larger spaces. So we've adjusted a couple at the older buildings to allow us to find a space so we could put a socially distanced and isolation piece together in the clinics. But we will continue to work on all of these items as listed, and we have been successful in doing the old buildings as well as all the new ones.
And just as a second, you've done obviously the same process at the middle and high school level. Are there I know there are some classrooms that are extremely large. I was reading a post, not classrooms, but class sizes that are extremely large. I was reading one from one of our AP teachers who has some classes that have 40 students. So assuming that they're somehow blended, assuming some don't come back right away, I usually take half and then half again. That's still a rather large class. Have we looked at using some spaces? You mentioned the cafeteria for other classes that need to be in bigger spaces. For example, if there's an auditorium or if there's the gymatoriums or whatever spaces, libraries that might be able to be used. Have we looked at how that might help those larger class sizes?
We actually have. So I can tell you at Barber as an example, because that was our pilot building, we actually went into the LRC. We actually counted the tables and we know exactly how many students we could fit in that LRC. We've also worked with Mrs. Williams, the principal, and should we need to, because we don't know exactly how the specials will work, we might need to use the music rooms, the art rooms, the large group areas. To your point, would the gym, if we're doing gym classes differently, also present seating availability? And obviously, because we social distance the students in the classrooms, we would move the materials such as desk or chairs to those areas if it was needed so we could help set those up. We have been very creative. We just haven't got a building with students in it yet with a large enough group that we have not continued to be able to address that issue. But like you, we are looking at class rosters. We're getting numbers from principals so that we can determine, based on what the families elect to do, no matter what model it is, that we can help students comfortable and socially spaced during the day that we're there with us, along with their teachers and the supporting staff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mansfield. Dr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Mansfield, I was just going to ask if you have any more questions. I mean, I'll defer to you if you got one more. Just wanted to, before I hopped in.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Okay. So as I was watching the video, there were, and I think I've got two comment/questions, not two of each, but two comment/questions. As I was sort of thinking through the emails I've gotten from parents, many of the emails have talked about a desire to see their kids back in school because of the importance of socialization, right? A lot of value that's been placed upon the socialization aspect of students in schools. And I have to confess, socialization looks like it would be seriously truncated or abridged in what I'm seeing here. And I'm not saying that's wrong. The precautions that we're putting in place are the right precautions. I just think that the parents who are watching and opining on this topic, I think it's important that they understand that your kids going back to school, it's not going back to school like it was. What you've seen presented today, that's the new normal. And candidly, I've got two young daughters that are not school age yet, but candidly, and I'm just being honest for the folks who are watching this, I think we owe it to them to share our opinions. Candidly, I found it depressing, that this is the environment that kids are going to go into when they are back in school. And again, rightfully so, right? I'm not being critical of what's being presented. I think the videos did a great job of kind of spelling out, folks, this is the new normal, so if we're putting kids back in school, this is the environment we're putting them back into. I think that has to be said clearly. And I may get some pushback from saying this publicly in a board meeting, but I'm sorry, that's just the reality. The other thing that went through my mind, this is my second comment, is I was trying to visualize, because we talk about the special eds and the kindergartners, which again, I think rightfully so, those are the two groups that we have to, be thinking about, first and foremost, as well as our high school seniors too, right? To be candid, but I'm thinking about kindergartners, for example, and I'm trying to visualize a class of kindergartners staying 6 feet apart all day and keeping their mask on all day. And I have to admit a certain degree of trepidation when I think about it, even though in my mind, I'm like, we got to find a way to get these kids back. So I guess what I'm saying is that, maybe what we have to do is just be candid and say, hey, we're not going to keep these kids 6 feet apart. And it's a part of the risk that's going to go into it. And as parents of young kids and or special ed or any kids, just accept that as an administration and as a board, that the plans that we come up with, they're just that, they're plans, right? And just know that this is the reality that your kids are walking into. And this is, and you may find that that this reality that your kids are walking back into, it may in some ways be more depressing than what they're experiencing right now in a remote model. So those are my two comments. And if you have, and Ms. Folk or anybody else that has that, I'd love to hear a comment on that. Whether you think I'm, way off base, and that's fine too. Because I think this is where we have, honest conversation is here, right? And if you got other thoughts, you think I'm way off base, that's fine too. But again, I'd be interested in hearing the collective feedback on this.
No, Dr. Hall, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is not going to be the way it was before. Kids are going to have to be maintained. There's going to have to be appropriate space being maintained, between students. And I also have, concerns about, we always talk about, how much time our kids are spending, in front of their teachers. And I don't want to get too much into the next presentation, but there's going to be a lot of issues. How much time do we expect learning to happen when, our teachers may have to constantly remind some of our, particularly our youngest students, not to touch each other, not to hug each other, to stay distant, keep your mask on. That's, that is a tough situation for, I think, staff to have to deal with in a school, and then just let alone lunch. You go in any of our lunchrooms, doesn't matter whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, it's, it is a very robust time of day, and we can't have that, as long as we're under this pandemic. I understand, what many of our speakers have said, but, there's a lot more at stake than just what the kids might bring or not bring to school. It's also the adults as well.
Thank you, Dr. Hull and Dr. James. Before we go back around again, Ms. Autry, did you want to jump in, or should I go back around?
Nope. There's no need to repeat the obvious. Thank you. I concur with every one of my fellow board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Would anyone else like to follow up? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Dr. James?
Okay.